Hello. Today we're at the Lone Pine Ranch, which is the home of Wayne Dakan in East Quincy, California. He calls his home site the Lone Pine Ranch because of the single ponderosa pine tree in his front yard. You can still see some of the beer cans that decorate the pine tree. These were gifts from some of his younger friends a few years back. Wayne is known by many people in Plumas County as the patriarch of the environmental movement. He's 77 years old, and he's lived most of the last 54 years of his life in Plumas County. And today we're going to go into his home and talk to him about the many changes that he's gone through during his life.
Tell me if I'm designed yon haughty lord and humble slave, by nature so divine, why was an independent wish e'er planted in my mind? And why, oh why, has man the will and power to make his fellow mourn? It's from Robert Burns, man was made to mourn. Robert Burns has had a tremendous influence in my whole life. I was reading him by the time I was 10 years old. My father was very fond of Robert Burns. So he's had a big influence. He was an iconoclast, an upsetter of the apple cart, and a character something like Thoreau.
Did your father read Robert Burns to you?
Oh yes, he was very fond of Robert Burns.
What did your father do for a living?
Well, he did a little bit of everything. He was a homesteader. He homesteaded in western Nebraska, and he was born in 1856. That's a good while back. And, he went to western Nebraska as a young man and homesteaded there, and he got to be the richest man in the county. He had $10, so he went back to Iowa.
You had a lot of brothers and sisters there, didn't you?
I had, there was 10 of us. 10. I was the youngest of 10.
So here you are in Plumas County. Can you just kind of briefly tell me how you made it from Nebraska to Quincy?
Oh, it's been a long, drawn-out story. It all has to do with the Great Depression. I got out of high school, or left high school, just about the time to get into the Great Depression, and wandered around over the world for many years on the tramp. In fact, we used to sing a song. We were singing it about the time of the Second World War. I've wandered over this land, a roaming working man. No clothes to wear and not much food to eat. Now the government foots a bill, buys my clothes and feeds me swill. Gets me shot and puts me underground 6 feet. Old Franklin Roosevelt told the people how he felt. We damn near believed what he said. He says, I hate war, and so does Eleanor, but we won't be safe till everybody's dead. That's what we were singing before the Second World War.
Well, tell me, did you graduate from high school in Nebraska?
No, I quit about the 11th grade, waiting for the teachers to catch up with me.
Where did you go after 11th grade?
Well, I went out on the tramp and roamed around for a good many years. And, I was, you could say of me like the old song, I've worked the sluice and topped the spruce and have taken a turn at the plow, or searched for gold in the rain and the cold, and worked on the river scow. I done all of it. I beat my way from Frisco Bay to the rock-bound coast of Maine, and all up and down all over the country. Finally came to Plumas County after all.
So have you been pretty much a loner most of your life, Wayne?
Yes, most of the time. I've been on the move an awful lot. And there was, I don't know, this is the only home I ever had, I think. That's why I feel so much at home here now. Of course, I've spent most of my life here in Plumas County, but I was still roaming around, railroaded a lot, and mined everything you could think of. I've been doing it.
Hmm. So you came here as a gold miner?
No, I came here on the tramp in the Depression times, and I came into Quincy just the way I travel around now with my pack on my back. I had everything that I owned on my back when I came to Quincy. And, I used to think and say that when a man had more than he could pack off on his back, he had a whole lot of stuff that didn't belong to him, and certainly have a lot of stuff that's going to be a burden to him, and I still believe that's true.
How'd you make your living during the Depression?
Well, I got to mining out here on Poor Man and Hopkins Creek after I came here and found out how to mine. I made out very good. It was a life that I was very well adapted to. I could raise a little garden, and I could get my own meat and fish, and I didn't require much, and it was a life that just suited me.
Mm-hmm.
For up until the time of the Second World War, well, I did very well out on the Poor Man, Hopkins, and Nelson Creek. All just made a living, and make much of a living, but it was a whole lot better than what was available to young men at that time. There was years people just don't realize what the Great Depression was like, but there was years when I didn't make $200.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't you keep mining during the Second World War?
Well, there was a lot of things. I had made up my mind that I wasn't going to go to that war. I'd seen too many wars. I remember the First World War. I remember when the boys went to the First World War and when they came back. Some that did come back. And I had made up my mind that I was not going to go to war. I'd had lots of experience with war through the Depression times, and got well acquainted with lots of old-time wobblies, the old IWW movement, and they were people that opposed the First World War. I was very familiar with Eugene Debs, and what a wonderful man he was, and Bill Haywood, and a whole bunch. I was well schooled,
Mm-hmm.
and I had made up my mind a long time before the Second World War came along that I wasn't going to be there.
So where were you during the Second World War?
Well, I refused to go, and so they put me in a concentration camp, and I spent the time in the concentration camp.
And then what did you do after the concentration camp, after Second World War?
Well, then I'm trying to think about all those things that happened. I came back to Plumas County, and I went back out to the old diggings where I had been, and I was going to set up and go to mining, but there wasn't a soul there anymore. There wasn't anything there but me, and I stayed a few weeks, and I decided I couldn't do this, and so I went down and went to work on the railroad. And after that, I was so poor that I never was able to quit, and I got seniority bound after a while, and I had to stay there, and so I finally stayed and finished up at the railroad and got a pension, and that's what I live on now. I'm very, very lucky.
Wayne, I really enjoy looking at your family photos here. Is this a picture of your parents?
Yes, that's my father and my mother. My father was born in 1856. My mother was 17 years younger than him.
Was she from Nebraska too?
She was born in Illinois, and he was born in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. This was taken a lot later, I assume, like in the 50s?
And
or?
this is probably out in 1950s sometime.
And is this a house that you lived in, or?
My father built this house in 1915. It's a cement block house. He made the cement blocks and made the house, the whole thing.
Did you grow up there?
Yes, I grew up pretty much in this house.
And down here we have a picture of your classmates, I believe. Where are you in the picture?
Well, I'm the little boy at the extreme right, And this was taken about 1922, I think.
You remember anything you ever liked or disliked about school?
Oh, it's awful hard to remember now. I didn't particularly dislike it or like it, either one, I don't think.
Well, how did you leave high school?
Well, I had a little trouble with the teachers, and we had a little argument, and I decided that I would wait and let them catch up with me, and I took off.
Okay.
I didn't finish high school.
Okay, this next picture over here is some family members. Who is in this picture?
Yes, my father and my mother and two of my sisters. There's two of the older sisters, one of them born in 1900 and the other about 1905. They're both living yet.
Are they still living in Nebraska?
No, one of them lives in Sacramento and the other in the Riverside.
Oh, okay. And I understand that when you were growing up, you went out to Oregon and worked with some members of your family on a ranch?
This is a half-brother of mine at Pendleton, Oregon. It was on a big wheat ranch that he had out there.
Uh-huh.
And,
What did you do there?
I drove mules on the combine, and we worked huge teams of mules. That was the last of the big mule teams. Here's one of them here. This is a combine team that I drove when I was 21 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Wonderful bunch of big mules. Those are all, there's nothing like that anymore at all. Nobody would know how to even hook them up today.
Well, what's it like with mules pulling a combine like that?
Well, it's quite a thrill, I can tell you. There's another picture here of just what it looks like to drive the team. Here's a look at what 22 team looks like when you're driving it. They're strung out there a long ways. It's quite a deal, I can tell you.
How old were you?
21.
21. And you got to drive them.
That's right.
Okay. You've got a picture over here with some deer in the picture. It's kind of a strange one.
That was a friend of ours and my brother and I. We'd been up and killed some little black-tailed deer up in the mountains of eastern Oregon, and they were frozen. They'd froze the night before, and we brought them home, and they were froze stiff as a board. You could stand them up. They're all gutted, of course. You could stand them up, and they looked like stuffed deer, but they'd all been gutted. We brought them home.
How long did you work on your stepbrother's ranch in Oregon?
Oh, about a couple of years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I worked a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
This is a picture of that mule team. Very good picture of them. What a team of mules it was. They were all great big mules, and they'd kick you out through the barn door at the slightest provocation. They were all, you had to watch them all the time, I'll tell you.
Okay. So, Wayne, I understand that after you got tired of those mules kicking people around, you left your brother's ranch. And how did you end up in one of the CCC camps?
Well, I can't exactly remember. It was in the heart of the Depression. There was nothing to do, and somewhere or another I got on how to get into the CCC camp, and so I thought I'd try it for a while, which I did for one summer.
What does CCC stand for?
Civilian Conservation Corps. I'll tell you a little something about it that most people don't realize. In my estimation, we were training an army at that time. There was many hundreds of thousands of people went through the CC's camp, and it was run by the Army. And you're all divided up into companies and platoons, and it was all run by the Army. And I seen very shortly that it was indoctrination for the Army, and so I didn't stay very long. I was wanting out of it right quick.
What kind of work did you do?
Well, we were working on soil conservation, something very, very important. We were, I was back in Nebraska where this was taken, and we were working on soil conservation, something that badly needed to be done, something that's badly neglected yet today. And that part I liked very much, but I soon seen that it was indoctrination for the Army.
Okay, the picture you have here on the right, can you tell me what you've got on there? And
Well, they issued us our winter underwear, and they were such a ridiculous outfit that we had to put them on and show just how we was going to look during the winter time.
okay. I see you're standing in front of a little house. Did you have permanent structures, or did you live in tents?
That was a permanent structure.
Uh-huh. And over here on the left, you're standing with a friend of yours in front of one of the tents
Well,
there?
that was the summer underwear there.
Uh-huh.
What an outfit. We were in the tents at that time.
Okay. You said you weren't there very long. How long did you stay?
Oh, about a year, I think.
Was the pay good?
No, the pay was very, very poor. You got, I think it was $30 a month. You got $5 a month. You sent the rest home to your folks.
Okay, here we have a picture. I think you're in this one too. Which one are you?
Well, I'm second from the left, and that was when we were living in tents in real hot summertime.
Okay. And then this next one down here, it looks like a picture of
Yes, that's a bunch of us. We'd got a gallon of alcohol, I think, and some near beer, and we were mixing it up in front of the tents. It's in Prohibition times yet, you remember. This was before repeal of Prohibition. And
where'd you get the beer?
it was near beer, but the alcohol we bought from a bootlegger.
Okay.
We was having a big time there about this time.
This next one shows you standing with the door open there.
That was the truck I drove here at this outfit. It was a brand new one, I think, a 33 or something. I can't remember the Chevy or Ford. I can't remember. That was my job, was driving this truck.
You said you worked on soil conservation. What job exactly did you do?
Well, I hauled the men back and forth from the job in this truck here. That was my job.
And you spent the whole time in Nebraska?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you said you left the CCC camp after a year. Let me ask you something. I know a lot of people had to send their wages home to their family. Did you have to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how much were you allowed to keep?
$5.
$5 a month.
Yes.
So did you send it to your parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They were hard up at that time, and so I stayed there a while, and done that. They furnished their clothes. We got everything we needed at $5 a month, and we had to save like hell to get enough money to get a gallon of alcohol. Of course, a gallon of alcohol didn't cost very much.
Do you remember how they recruited you?
Oh, I can't remember. It was, as I told you, it was in the height of the Depression. In some way or another, I found out I could get into it, and I had nothing else to do, and so I got into it.
Okay, Wayne, so you left the CCC camp, and somehow, I know you ended up in Plumas County during the Depression, but I understand you rode a lot of trains, or you made it around the country, didn't you?
Well, yes. Like I've mentioned before, it was in the heart of the Depression, and there wasn't anything much to do. I came to Plumas County on the tramp. Everything I owned was on my back, and I had been on the tramp for a good long while. And
what did you do while you were on the tramp? Where'd you go?
well, every place you could think of, up and down across the continent. I'd done a great many things, and was on the bum a long time. Got to be a very good bum. I knew how to operate, and there was times when I almost made up my mind I'd never do any more work. You couldn't get a job that amounted to a damn, and You were better off to be on the tramp a lot of times.
So how did you eat?
Well, I went to the back doors and asked people for something to eat. And I got so I was very good at it. I could go up and tell the lady about the button I had and get her to sew a shirt on it for me and stuff like that. And I found out how to operate, and you get so you're able to do that kind of stuff after a while. You have to. It's either that or starve to death, you know.
Well, I'm trying to imagine what it was like. Were there a lot of people riding the trains where you were?
When I came to Keddy the first time, I'll bet there was 300 men on the train. There was two beaneries at Keddy, one at the east switch and one at the west switch. Some old bum would sit down there and he'd cook up a pot of beans and he'd charge the best of them. We had a little sign in the beanery, and they were all over the country. Had one in Orville, had a tobacco tree down there. I can remember Saxabull Durham and Prince Albert and everything hanging on the tree as a tobacco tree, and the beanery had a sign, eat a bowl of our beans and the whole old 252 down to Salt Lake. And you wouldn't get very far on that load of beans, but that was the sign anyway.
What's old 252?
Well, that was the old mallet compound engine that used to run up and down the canyon here. They were big mallet compound steam engines.
What did you do in the wintertime?
Froze to death a lot of times. It was rough. I was on the tramp one time, from November till 1st of April. Never had a bath one time from Thanksgiving till after New Year's. The water's so damn cold they couldn't get in any place, and there was no place to get a bath. And all that time without a bath. And, oh, it was a horrible situation, I'll tell you.
What's the coldest you ever remember it?
Well, coming down out of Green River, Wyoming in the wintertime. Well, that was real cold, but I can remember one real bad one right here. Riding from Westwood to Klamath Falls. Oh my God, I forgot all about that. But I was into Westwood one time. Then in the 30s, there was about 3 foot of snow on the ground at Westwood. And the night before, some boys had went over to the hump to Klamath Falls, and a couple of fellows froze to death. So we got in there and they stopped us, a whole bunch of us, and held us at Westwood. That old Redwood Lumber Company had a lot of shacks around there, and we stayed a couple of days there. And when they finally let us go, me and another fellow got behind the engine about 4 or 5 cars at one of the old mallet compounds, and there was a lot of new snow on the ground, and we were riding on an open car, and I didn't have any underwear even. I'd been down in Southern California all winter, and my God, along about 3 o'clock in the morning, I froze off of that thing, and we got way up towards Klamath Falls. I didn't know where in the hell we were, but we seen one light, me and another fella, and I said to him, Mac, I can't hold her down any longer, and he says, I can't either, and so we jumped off when they stopped for water, and we went to that light. And it happened to be in an abandoned CCC camp. And there was a couple of working shifts in there just like us. And they were the caretakers. And we knocked on the door, and they opened it up, and we were just covered with snow, and they said, my God, come on in here. So we come in and stayed all night, and sat there and drank their coffee and played pinochle, and next morning another train come along, and we got on and got on out there.
So you must have spent Christmas on the tramp.
Yes, I've been on the tramp on Christmas. I remember being in Phoenix, Arizona on Christmas Eve, sleeping in an old barn, and come Christmas morning I had 60 cents. And there was a little beer joint down the road, so I went down there and bought 60 cents worth of beer that day, and that's the way I spent my Christmas that day. I remember working for 15 cents an hour. You get rich in a hurry that way.
What kind of work?
Packing lettuce, yeah.
Okay. So you were on the tramp for a year or two?
Oh, several years.
Several years.
Yeah, I was all over the country. I did a lot of different things and was on the tramp a lot of times. I remember being in Redlands, California one time in the wintertime, and come a orange freeze, and they were had to have men to light the smudge pots, and I got a job there. 50 cents an hour. Oh my God, what wages that was. And that's the only job I'd had all winter. And I made enough money to buy a sleeping bag, I remember, out of that. And one of the things, I hadn't had to drink all winter, and I got a few dollars, and I went into San Bernardino, and I had 3 bottles of ale. Never had a drink all winter. And my God, I got drunk, and I could see that I was going to pass out. And there was a house of ill repute just across the street, and I went over there, and I got a room. And after a while, I woke up. I don't know how long, but the landlady and me was going through my pockets, and I says, "Now I must be somebody, and I must have come from someplace." So about that time, we found a ticket in my pocket, a bus ticket for Redmond. That's when I knew who I was. Oh, what times. I could write stories about it.
So how did you land in Plumas County?
Well, I just coming up here on the tramp, they were building the highway, and I was on the train. I can remember, you know, the big tunnel down there, the great big one. They were building that, and we come by on the train, and you could see the various outlets where they were dumping muck out of that tunnel, and I can remember that very well. And we got to Keddy, and as I saw, there was a lot of snow on the ground at Keddy, and I stayed all night, and next morning I went up towards Klamath Falls. But I liked what I seen, and I decided I'd come back that fall, which I did. I turned around and come back. I made a little stake that fall, and I come back and went out on Poor Man and Hopkins Street, and I just happened to, well, first I went on the Middle Fork for a while, and I met a fellow on the train that knew a lot about the country and told me where the Middle Fork was and how to get there, and I walked out. That fall I had a few dollars, and I bought a little grub stake, and I got in, and I got started mining, and I stayed until the Second World War.
Did you pass through Quincy on the way?
What's that?
Did you?
Yes. Yes, first night I spent in Quincy was in the cemetery, this old cemetery out here, but right close to town. I always used to do that when I was on the tramp. You go over in the cemetery, and nobody going to bother you. It's nice and quiet, and there won't nobody prowling around, and you can have a good sleep. And I did that lots of times. That's where I spent my first night in Quincy, in the cemetery.
Okay. You know, Wayne, this is one of my favorite pictures of you when you were a gold miner down on Nelson Creek here with your waders on. You kind of look in this picture to me like Scott Russell, who's one of our local residents and likes to spend a lot of time in the Sierra today. Can you tell me how you found out about gold mining?
Well, I came here, like I told you, on the tramp, and I met a man that had mined out on the Middle Fork, and he suggested that I go out there, and I did, and I had a little stake that fall, and I had a little grub stake. And by talking around with other people, I learned how to mine. And this was several years later, this picture that you have there. I was up on Nelson Creek. I was digging under that boulder that I'm sitting on. And friend of mine come along and took that picture. I'd found a little piece of gold down there about the size of a pea, but it led me to believe that it had broken off a bigger piece about the size of a pineapple, and that's the one that I was after under there.
Did you ever find the pineapple?
No, I never did find one, but I was always after it.
Well, so did you mine by yourself?
Yes, most of the time, but I had partners too. I had a partner one time, Al Davis. I can tell some of these stories now. They're all mostly dead, and Al and I were mining out on Hopkins Creek, and another old friend of mine, Cornell Egbert, came along. He had a woman, Mary was her name. She wasn't the Virgin Mary, but anyway, Al and I high-graded the woman. She come over to our place and stayed with us and mined with us that summer. And Al was quite a character. He went to town one time to get groceries, and he got drunk in there, and he come back by Egbert's ranch, and they had a mule, Johnny Mule. Everybody used Johnny Mule to pack their groceries in. You could load up and take your groceries in and turn Johnny Mule loose, and he'd go home. But anyway, the night before, I'd went to meet Al at Nelson Creek Bridge, and he didn't show up. So the next morning, I come back again, and here's Al this time. He's there. He'd all skinned up, his overalls was tore and everything else, and said, "What happened to you, Al?" Well, he started home, and he had a snoot full, and he got the rope around his arm somewhere or another, and Johnny Mule decided he'd go home, and he drug Al around through the bushes there and skinned him all up. Anyway, and the next day, why, we got home with our groceries, but the first day we didn't make it.
Uh-huh. So you were pretty far from town, weren't you?
Well, yes, up Nelson Creek, up the old High Creek, Nelson Creek Trail, it's 5-6 miles anyway.
Uh-huh. Was there any kind of transportation that ever went through?
No. Well, we did get our mail at Onion Valley. There was a stage went in 3 times a week. You could send your gold in, and they'd sell it and bring your groceries back. And I met various places along. Onion Valley was one place. Nelson Creek Bridge was another place. And we all used that stage.
But they didn't do that year-round, did they?
No, that's just in the summertime, about 3-4 months in the summertime.
So how'd you make it through the winters?
I had, by the wintertime, I would always have enough grub to get me by, and had some real tough times. One winter I started into the winter with $20. That's all the money I had. And me and Frank Cochran, he was a famous old miner on Poor Man Creek. We agreed to mine together that winter. I had the $20, and I was going to furnish that, and I was to furnish the meat. We lived way up on Poor Man Creek, and I had to ski down to the Middle Fork and get the deer and bring it back, and that was my job, was to furnish the meat. Let me tell you, before spring, that got to be quite a job, too. I can remember one thing that happened. I had skied way down to the Middle Fork and killed a deer and brought it home. And he had a damned old hound dog, and hung that meat up in the meat house, or in the woodshed, and the damn hound dog got into it and eat about half a ham one night. Holy God Almighty, was I fit to be tied. Let me tell you, that was an awful job. It was 10, 12 mile round trip, and down the mountain and back up on skis, packed the deer and the whole business. It was a hard job, but we did very well that winter. We were mining underground. Everything was done with a hand jack, a double jack and a single jack. We drilling holes and putting in shots, and we were working underground, and we had some pretty good ore, and we made a little chunk of money.
When you say shots, you mean dynamite?
Yeah, it was all hand drilling, and we were following a little string of quartz about 2 inches wide, and every once in a while it'd swell, and it was in red ochre, and we'd take the ore down at the cook stove and burn it in the cook stove and pound it out in a hand mortar and pound it out, or pan it out, and get what free gold we could. And we made a living all winter, but my job was to furnish the meat, and let me tell you, that got to be quite a job.
Do you remember how much you made that winter?
Well, we was able to come out with about $100 a piece a head for groceries. Anyway, we made more than enough to eat. And that's how you operated in those days.
So did you mainly do gold panning or placer mining?
I did a little bit of everything.
You did?
Yeah. I did a lot of placer mining, but I did a lot of hard rock mining too, and some hydraulic mining. It was against the law, but we did some of it.
Oh, could you describe that? Wasn't that outlawed in the 1890s?
Well, it was, but we used not a big monitor, but a small hose and some pressure, and you could get away with it for a while till the debris commission got after you. And, there wasn't too much anybody going to bother you much in those times. If you was out there making a living, why, they was glad to have you out of their hair. You wasn't around town on the bum anyway.
So you were able to somehow fix up a hose with enough pressure to wash down the side of
well,
a
it
hill?
wouldn't wash down the side of a mountain, but it'd wash a little, you know. Yeah, we did a little of that. We did a little of everything. Everything to did a lot of sniping. That's where you pick the bedrock. Okay? On Nelson Creek, after a flood, you can go by and the water lowers, and there'd be a few nuggets laying around here and there. That's what you call sniping, is going along, watching the bedrock and picking up the big pieces.
So did you didn't mine in the winter time, did you?
Oh, yes.
You did?
Yeah, that winter I was telling you about. Oh, that was an awful winter, too. We got hit with a snowslide. We had a 2-story cabin, and along about midnight, a snowslide hit that cabin, and it just caved the whole lower story in. Our cook stove was down there, all our groceries and everything. We were sleeping upstairs, and the snowslide come along and just filled that whole kitchen full. Took the stove and wadded it up like a tin can, and mess you ever seen. Come just at midnight, and it hit the cabin, and I thought an earthquake had hit. And so I said to Frank, "What in the hell happened here anyway?" "Well, I don't know, but he said I'll take a look." And he went over to look downstairs to the stairs, and he said, "Hell, I can't see downstairs." He couldn't see downstairs because the damn snow was right up to the top of it. We crawled out the upstairs window, and the only thing we had to work with at first was a pair of snowshoes. The shovels was even buried. And we worked from midnight until 5 o'clock the next day, and we got the cook stove out, got it set up, and got our groceries going. 5 o'clock the next evening, we made some hot cakes, and we went back to bed. That's how long we'd worked to uncover that cabin. What a mess. Everything happens when you get down and out, everything happens to you, you know. We had enough trouble without that snowslide.
Did you ever come into town during this time?
No. There was 2 different winters when I was from November to June, I think, before I got to town.
Would you go back to gold mining? I mean, why did you stop gold mining?
The war drove us out.
How?
Well, he was going to get drafted or something going to happen anyway. I wasn't about to get drafted because I wasn't going to go, but eventually I got caught up with anyway. I wasn't going to register for that draft, but you want to, I don't know how much more of this story you want, but I wasn't going to register for the draft, but since I was up, I happened to be out for a couple of months 40, I think it was, when they started the register the draft. I was at Ellensburg, Washington. I used to work at Ellensburg quite often. Went up there for a couple of months. When the draft come, I debated a long time. I waited till the last day, and I finally decided to register. And I did. I went in and registered. But coming home that fall, I went by my friend's house at Biola. An old friend lived at Biola. It was fall then, and he had the fire going, so I shoved that draft card in there and burned it up. And so after the war started, well, I didn't have any draft cards, and so I was in a bad shape.
You know, Wayne, I would imagine that it was real different being a conscientious objector in World War II than it was, for example, during the war in Vietnam.
Absolutely, there were only 15,000 of us.
15,000?
Yes. And Vietnam, there was a lot more than that. But you want to go back to the men that really had a tough time. It's the fellows that objected in World War I, the old-time wobblies. They killed a lot of them. They did everything you could think of. We didn't have very much of that. We did have some men killed. I'll tell you about that later on, one of my good friends. But it was pretty rough. I'll tell you, after Pearl Harbor, it was pretty hard. Everybody was sold. Of course, I understand about what Pearl Harbor was. Cordell Hull and Franklin Roosevelt engineered that little deal. And if you know anything about history, well, you'll know what I mean. It was deliberately provoked. And, but after Pearl Harbor, it was mighty hard to get any sympathy from anybody. You didn't get it. You was a yellow belly and everything else you could think of. You didn't go.
Well, you said you spent the years during the war in camps, detention camps or concentration camps?
Yes, I was first in a Mennonite camp out of Placerville, a little ways.
In California?
Yes. And I stayed there until they opened up a government camp. That was in Colorado, Mancos, Colorado.
Where in Colorado?
Mancos, Colorado, southwest, or southern, not southwest, yes, southwest part of Colorado. As soon as they opened up that government camp, I went there.
So, I mean, how did you get to be put into one of these camps? Did you, I mean, just inform them, or did they find you?
Way I got in, I had registered up in Ellensburg, and I told you I burned up my draft card. Well, after Pearl Harbor, well, I decided I was going to have to make a move of some kind, so I turned myself in.
Here in California?
Yes.
Where?
Here in Quincy.
In Quincy?
And
what happened?
Well, they didn't have any FBI man in town that day, so they sent me home, and I was living down around Bald Rock at that time, down the canyon, Bald Rock, and I went home, and so finally they got to corresponding with me and found out that I'd originally registered in Ellensburg, Washington. So that was my draft board, and they wrote to me, and I told them where I stood, and they didn't object to my status as a conscientious objector, so later on I reported over here at Placerville.
Did you have to fill out a long form giving all your reasons?
Not very much, no. I was relatively lucky. I suppose I had a very liberal draft board. Ellensburg was a very liberal town at that time. It was an old-time wobbly country, and I never did meet any of the draft board, but I have a hunch that I had a very liberal draft board, because they never asked much questions. I just told them that I wasn't going to go, and that's all there was to it, and they didn't object, and they eventually sent me over to Placerville.
Okay. What did you do at Placerville?
I worked there for the Forest Service. One of the things I did was cruise timber. It's a survey of how much timber there is, how much logs can be cut on a certain amount of ground. I was very good at cruising timber, and I get in on that, and that's what I done there for almost a year, I think.
Was it a very big camp?
There was 200 of us. usually there was a company. I mean, it's just again very much like the Army.
Uh-huh. And then you said they transferred you to Colorado?
Yes, yes.
What did you do there?
Well, I was building an irrigation dam there, and there was a lot of timber work to that. We were cutting down trees, and I was a saw filer, and so I filed saws there quite a little, and also I was a powder monkey for quite a while. I handled lots of powder, and so I got to handle powder, and later on I got to filing saws.
Mm-hmm.
And,
how did they treat you?
Well, as long as you kept your mouth shut and didn't say anything, why, you got along fine. You get along with Adolf Hitler that way, of course. But if you said anything, why, there was a U.S. Marshal and the handcuffs, and away you went. And
Did that ever happen to you?
no, it never happened to me, but it happened to a lot of my friends. And I seen them haul out of a lot of them, and I just... well, I stayed. I guess I was a cooperator, enough cooperator to be able to get by anyway. I didn't cooperate, but...
Did you stay in Colorado through the rest of the war?
No. When they closed up, I was transferred to Elmira, New York. It's right close to the Corning Glass Works. And I went up there, I can't remember for how long, but maybe a couple of months. And I happened to get acquainted with some people there. I got acquainted with some people that lived at Elmira, and after I was released from the camp, I stayed with them about 3 weeks in the spring of the year, and I made maple syrup there. Wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most wonderful experience I've ever went through. We went out and got the maple syrup and boiled it down. You have to boil 30 gallons of syrup to make 1 gallon of... 30 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. It's a hell of a job.
Uh-huh. So you were in these camps for 4 years?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Mennonite camp.
That was the one at Placerville, yes. That was a Mennonite. The Quakers had the camp. And let me see who else. I think the Brethren had a camp. I think there's 3 of them in on it.
Now, when you say they ran the camp, what do you
they
mean?
paid for it and everything. The Mennonites, the Friends Service Committee, they're a strong organization, old-time organization. They paid for all of this.
So the government didn't pay?
No.
Who paid for it in Colorado and New York?
The government.
The government.
That's why I went there. I went there as soon as it was opened up. I didn't want the church to be financing my incarceration.
Why not?
Oh, I certainly object to that. I think the government certainly ought to take care of us, by God.
Uh-huh.
It shouldn't be the object of the church to take care of us.
Did you get a lot of negative reactions from other people who weren't in the camps at that time or not?
Well, yes. The people who run the camps were very much opposed to us, but we got along fairly well. In Colorado, there was, well, that's a government camp, and it's run by some pretty hard characters, and there's a bunch of us that's pretty hard characters, too. I remember one very amusing incident. This real old hard character that run the camp, every once in a while he'd wake up in the morning and the rising sun would be floating from his flag top, you know. And one time they put it up there and he couldn't get it down, and so they had to dig up the flagpole and take it down. And while it was down, mine disappeared one night.
What kind of people did you meet in the camps?
Everything that you could think of. There was all kinds of religions. I've had the postgraduate course in all religions of all kinds. I'm not at all religious myself. I'm very much of an atheist. I was before I went in, and I still am. But I've met all kinds. Everything that you could think of. I've had a postgraduate course in religion, I can tell you.
I think it'd be interesting to look at some of your pictures of some of the people that you met.
Oh, that's fascinating people. was in the camps with us.
So it looks like in this picture you're standing on the top step of a barrack?
Yes, that's an old CCC camp. We took that over in Colorado when we came there. And there's a very interesting story connected with this particular barracks. The neighbors had some pigs down the road, and they had an old sow, and she had several pigs. And in the wintertime, and they come up and lived in this barracks, and the boys took them in, and the powers that be didn't like it very well, but they lived in this barracks all winter with us.
How many of them?
There was 3 pigs and the old sow, and we got along real good with them people.
Over here on the right, which one is you in the photograph here?
I'm on your right there, but the man on the left is Fritz Kaufhold. Now here's a very interesting character. He was born in Germany. He is a German citizen. He's a Quaker, and he was also a socialist. He got out of Germany just ahead of Hitler. He told me about hiding one of the old Republic flags in an old castle, and just before he left, and he got out just ahead of Hitler. But the irony of it is that he escaped Hitler's concentration camps only to end up in an American concentration camp, and that's what happened to him. He refused to have anything to do with it here, the same as he did over there, and so he ended up in a concentration camp. A brilliant man. He was just about my age, but a wonderful man to talk to, a Quaker and a socialist. Two groups of people I admire very much, indeed.
Mm-hmm. So you knew him the whole time you were in Colorado?
Yes, yes. What a man.
Did you do a lot of reading then?
Lots of reading. I've always read all my life, and it was a wonderful opportunity there because we all had books of our own, and so we did lots of reading.
Well, speaking of lots of reading, there's an interesting photograph down here. Could you explain what's going on in this photograph?
Well, that's a picture of me posing as Mahatma Gandhi. He was a very popular man at that time with us, and so we just made an occasion to take this picture. I shaved my hair all off, and they dressed me up in a sheet there and put some glasses on me and took this picture. I've passed this off to lots of people. There's Gandhi as a young man, and then they look a little closer, some of them, and see who it was, but most of them didn't even question it.
Well, was this part of your evening's entertainment activities, or?
Yes, we do things like this.
Can you explain some of the things you did for entertainment during those 4 years? What would you do in the evenings?
Well, you want to remember that we were with a very interesting group of people. There was 15,000 of us. And these were people who come through a pretty hard school, and they were all individualists and great thinkers. There was lots of intellectuals. Like I told you, we had all kinds of PhDs. We called them post-hole diggers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a group at the Mennonite camp at Placerville. I'm in the middle, in the back with the hat on, and in the front row to my right is my good friend John Tolstoy. Some of the other people I can't remember too well now, that they were all outstanding people.
So you probably had a lot of intellectual discussions with some of these people.
Oh, tremendous amount.
Did you find a lot of them had real fancy degrees?
Oh, lots of them. Yes, it was far above the average. Yes.
Could you tell us more about John Tolstoy? Because I know he meant a lot to you, and some interesting things happened.
There's a picture. The next picture there here. This is a picture of John Tolstoy. He graduated from UCLA, majored in sociology. And there's also a picture of he and his wife. This is their graduation picture. She majored in English. John at this time was about 32 years old. He had a brilliant future ahead of him. And this is more pictures of John cooking in one of our base camps. He went out as a cook, and that shows him in the kitchen. And it's an interesting story of what happened to John. After we left Placerville, he went to a little town in Colorado and agreed to take care of some feeble-minded children. And he lived in this little town. He was riding a bicycle back and forth to work, and some patriotic boob come along with in the back end of a pick-up truck with a baseball bat, and as John was riding to work, he hit him over the head and killed him. What a terrible loss to the American people. This is a brilliant man that would have done lots for us.
And then, did you keep in contact with some of these people that you met?
Yes. This is a picture of myself and Bill Englehart, a very good friend of mine. Bill was quite a student during the camps. He sat down and learned Spanish. He learned Spanish as a second language, and he spoke it so well that it is very hard for Spanish people to tell that he wasn't born in Mexico.
So what happened to him after the war?
Well, I've lost track of him the last few years. I don't know just what did happen to him, but he was a great man, a very good friend of mine. We were both, I'd say about 35 in this picture here. A little older, maybe. Yes, a little older than that, because after wars, I was probably 37, 38.
Uh-huh. And you have another friend over here who you obviously visited after you got out of the camp.
Yes, this was Herb Worley. Herb majored in law, but he didn't like the law, and he went to teaching school. And he was teaching in Carmel at the time this picture was taken. Bill and I went down there to see him. He had a wonderful library, the most wonderful library of labor history that I've ever seen. I haven't kept track of Worley. I regret that I haven't. That he was a member of the Communist Party at one time, and so he was a marked man all through the war. And they really gave him a hard time, a hard way to go.
You knew him in Colorado too?
All over, yes.
Okay. Well, Wayne, maybe you can give us an idea of what your political philosophy is and how you view peace and war in general.
Well, I'll try a lot of it. I think a lot of it come from an obscure poet that you're probably not too much familiar with, is Robert W. Service. He was a Red Cross man during the First World War, and I read lots of his stuff, and it influenced me a tremendous lot. He speaks about being an ambulance man in the First World War. And you yourself would mutter when you took the things that once were men and sped them through that zone of hate to where the dripping surgeons wait, and wonder too if in God's sight war ever can be right. Yet may it not be that war and crime but effort misdirected are, and if there's good in war and crime, there may be in my bits of rhyme, so take or leave them as you will, my songs from out the slaughter mill. I think that had a lot to do with it. The old wobbly philosophy had a lot to do with it. You may not realize it in this country, but there's a handful of people that own all the wealth. And those are the people that start these wars. If them that made them had to fight them, there wouldn't be no war. It'd be over with in a hurry. It's all just run for profit. I can remember so well the First World War, and it was just leading up to the Second World War. I remember when I was a very small boy, the first poem that I learned had to do with war. It went like this. The Kaiser's cow is grazing now where the shamrock used to grow. How long she'll be grazing there, no one seems to know. But Johnny Bull, unless you get a hustle on, there's one thing you should know. There'll be no grass for Pat's jackass where the shamrock used to grow. Now that was war propaganda. They were already starting it. I can remember, one of the first things that I remember is being in a parade to raise money for the First World War, and showed pictures of the German soldiers running around with Belgian babies hanging on their bayonets. Now I know that that's a bunch of horse hockey, and it's all such stuff as that. It's all this, they can start up their war machines and make you, it's my honest belief that the propaganda machine that we have in this country, the average man can be made to stone his own mother through this propaganda machine. I believe that very thoroughly. They can shape our way of thinking. They do shape our way of thinking. And we've always been controlled like this. It's been a handful of people that have had control of it. Take our vaunted democracy, how it started out. It was white male property owners were the only ones that had the vote. Do you realize the women didn't even have the vote? The slaves didn't have the vote. We never had a free election in this country until 140 years after the Revolution. Did you realize that? It's a long ways from a democracy, and it's still a long ways from a democracy. We've got a measure of political democracy in this country, but we live under an economic dictatorship that's as ruthless as anything the world has ever seen. There's just a handful of people that own the whole damn business. And everything that we do in this country is done for the benefit of big corporations. That's what's wrong with it. And that's why I didn't go to the First World or the Second World War, and I wouldn't go to any other war. I'll just set this one out.
You've mentioned a lot the Wobblies, and I know some people aren't familiar with whom the Wobblies were and are. Could you explain that?
Well, they were a labor organization in this country, and they sought to establish a socialistic economy where everything would belong to the people, and we would run the world for the benefit of the people. Instead of running the world for the benefit of huge corporations, all the wheels would turn for the benefit of the people. That's what Eugene Debs believed in. What a wonderful man. Run for president of the United States. While he was in Atlanta prison, he drew almost 1 million votes as president of the United States on the Socialist Party ticket, while he was in prison for refusing to go to the First World War. What a wonderful man. Some of my favorite quotations is from Eugene Debs. One of them is this: so long as there's a lower class, so long as there's a criminal element, I am of it. So long as there's a lower class, I am in it. So long as there's a soul in prison, I am not free. Victor Hugo said something along the same lines that I admire very much too. He said, the law in all its majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor to beg and to sleep and steal and to sleep under bridges. I've pattered my whole life after that situation. Thoreau had a lot to say about the same situation. Robert Burns. We've always been oppressed by a handful of people on top, and they're still there, the same damn crew. Mr. Nixon and Mr. Reagan, Mr. Meese. It's the same damn bunch of oppressors.
What activities do you take part in today?
Well, I'm very much concerned about the environmental movement. We've all got to be concerned. We're up against a situation where we get busy and we take care of this thing very shortly, or we cannot live here. We've destroyed everything that's good. Just last week, I read in the papers not safe to breathe the air in Sacramento. Now, don't worry about the Russians coming over here and getting us. The Russians didn't have anything to do with creating that situation in Sacramento. We got to worry about these birds right here. That's always been my philosophy. When they wanted me to go, a poor goddamn miner from the Feather River to go over and kill somebody on the Rhine, I wasn't interested in that malarkey. I don't believe in it. Can you think what it is? Now, if I go out here and go over and set my neighbor's house on fire tonight and burn his family up, oh, everybody would think I was a son of a bitch. But during that war, if I refuse to do something like that, they still think I'm a son of a bitch. Now, I want to know what's going on around here. Somebody's a little bit wrong around here. I just refuse to do it. And I think that we've all got to do it. If we're going to stay here, we've got to forget this war proposition. It'll all be over with in the time that it takes us to warm up a TV dinner. There won't be any world here. We've got to do a little better than that.
Wayne, I'm real interested to know how a man with your strong political views got into botanizing, because I know that many people know about your herbarium and your work with the Forest Service and your knowledge of plants in Plumas County. When did you start working so close to the ground?
Well, I was always interested in plant life, but I never could get any answers to what a plant was, what the name of it was. Most people don't know. And a long time ago, I got acquainted with Willis Lynn Jepson's Flora of California. And I got a copy of it and began to figure out things for myself. I can remember how proud I was the first time I was able to key out a plant with Jepson.
Mm-hmm.
And for years I carried Jepson with me wherever I went. And I learned more and more about plants. I learned a lot during the war. I was associated with people that were interested in botany.
Well, was this something that went back to when you were a child, or?
No, it's something that developed as I went along, particularly in my mining days. I was always out in the woods, and I wanted to know what things were, and so I finally found out that if I wanted to know, I'd have to figure it out for myself. And after I got Jepson, it wasn't too long, well, a few years, but a few years after that, I joined the California Native Plant Society when it first organized. And then, of course, I got acquainted with all kinds of people and all kinds of botanists. And the Native Plant Society has all the leading botanists in the state of California. Some of the outstanding botanists in the world are in the Native Plant Society.
So you said you were with that group as soon as it formed?
Yes, I've been with them 25 years or better. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
better than 25 years.
What kind of activities did the group do in the beginning?
Well, we're always interested in preserving native plants. We were interested in the rare and endangered plants, and eventually we made a list of the rare and endangered plants. In fact, in '74, when we first started it, we were all called to Davis one summer in '74, about 70 of us, and we spent 3 days in Davis. I was one of them, went to Davis, and we made a checklist of the rare and endangered species of California, and that was an education in itself. I got to know a tremendous amount of the people that worked in it, and I still know lots of them. I'm very well known in botanical circles today.
So when you went to Davis, was that organized by the UC system, University of California?
California Native Plant Society, yes,
Uh-huh.
called us all together. Yes.
Okay. Isn't that the same year that you started working with the Forest Service here?
I think so. No, I think I started in '73 with the Forest Service. The Forest Service came to me and asked me if I would, November '74, but they came to me and asked me if I would make a chest list of the vascular plants, and I told them that I would. And I started in the summer of '73 with the help of my good friend Arno Smith and various other people. I started to make a list, checklist, and this is the final result. It's this little book here. It's I think there's 89 pages, 69 pages, but it's all the vascular plants of Plumas County.
What is a vascular plant?
Well, it's plant that has vascular bundles. That don't mean anything to you, but I distinguish it in this way. It excludes the fungi, the mosses, the lichens, and little fellows that you wouldn't ordinarily notice. The vascular plants are all the trees, the shrubs, the grasses, the sedges, and the rushes, and everything that you're going to come in contact with. There's between 1,600 and 1,700 in this species, in this little book here. This is my last work. It's the vascular plants of Plumas County.
Okay. Can you explain what a herbarium is?
Well, might give you an idea what herbarium sheets are like. This happens to be a fern that I have pressed and put on herbarium sheets.
Let's hold it up a little bit here. Okay.
It's represents the whole plant, the root and the fronds, and how it reproduces, the spores on there and everything, and all labeled, the name and where it's collected and so forth. This is the way herbariums are made. This is the ferns of Plumas County here. There's, I think about 28 of them, something like that. Tremendous amount of work and all different kinds of ferns. This is only a small part of the flora of Plumas County, but this is the way you go about making a herbarium. It's a tremendous amount of work, I can tell you.
Did you go out and press 1,600 different plants?
No, I never got all of them. I've identified all of them, but I have never finished it all up. I got old and tired after a while, and I was doing all the work, and I got tired of that too, and I never got the job finished. It won't be finished now. It's a job that should have been done when they first started the Forest Service. The first thing you should do to start a Forest Service is take an inventory. That's what I done, was take an inventory of the forest. That's what this little book is. This is the inventory of what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first thing they should have done. The old-timers did start to do that, but some place along the line, the Forest Service got sidetracked, and they thought all they had to do was to get out and get out the logs, boys, and that's all they have done lately. It's they've got out to the logs to the point where we don't have any logs left. There isn't anything left here. Our forest is virtually destroyed. When they tell me about this Plumas National Forest, I want to ask them, where is this forest that you're talking about? There's been over half of it is burned up in my lifetime. Take out where the college sits. Big old fire there in 1946. You've lost topsoil there that won't be replaced in 10,000 years. That's the way we've managed our forest. We don't have any forest. I'm absolutely disgusted with what's going on.
Let me go back a little bit. I read in this blue book that you have here that you have some of these plants listed under the Rebecca Merritt Austin Memorial Herbarium.
Yes, that's...
Could you explain what that refers to?
Well, Rebecca Merritt Austin was the pioneer botanist to Plumas County. She come here over 100 years ago, and she discovered a lot of plants that were brand new. And she worked here in this country about 40 years, eventually died down in Chico. She was a wonderful little person. Come here to Black Hawk Creek, 1865, I think it was, on a dog sled. come in on a dog sled. They were mining people. And she come in and botanized this country. And she had very little training, but she learned it just like I did, the hard way. And what a wonderful person. I followed in her footsteps, and I started a little herbarium for the Forest Service, and I named it the Rebecca Merritt Austin Memorial Herbarium in honor of Rebecca Merritt Austin.
Well, weren't you the one that discovered a flower that she had found but hadn't been seen in a long time?
Yes, it had been lost for 97 years. Only goes one place in the Sierras. That's up here at Little Gold Lake. And she found it there, but she gave the location as a Spanish Peak. And they never found it again, and I got to reading about it and found out where she gave the location, and I thought she probably never got on Spanish Peak, and she didn't.
Why not?
She went up to Gold or Silver Lake and walked the old ditch around there to Little Gold Lake. So I walked that around there, and when I got to Gold Lake, here was a little plant, just like she described it. It's just been there ever since, 97 years, and it's still doing good.
What's the flower look like?
Well, it's a very small plant. I don't know whether you know anything about saxifrage or not, but it's a very small, insignificant little plant, but it's the only place in the Sierras where it grows. Plumas County has a lot of plants like that. One that I'm very much concerned about, where they're logging up here at the Water Service, is another little miner's lettuce that grows no place else in the Sierras but here in Plumas County.
Where is that?
Right up back of Quincy, where they're logging for their Quincy Water Service, the Dillinger property. I raised hell about it, but it wasn't rare enough that they would back me up. The Native Plant Society wouldn't. It's common enough in the Cascades, but this is the only place where it grows in Plumas County. Mm-hmm. Now we have at least a dozen that I can think of like that. They come from the Cascades right down to Plumas County and just stop. No further down the Sierras.
Uh-huh. Could you tell us something about the work you did in Butterfly Valley?
Well, I spent a whole summer there one year. The railroad had fired me one year.
What for?
Well, a little union activity, and they tried to push me around a little bit more than I wanted to go, and I told them that I wasn't going to take any of it, and they fired me. And they had me out for a couple of years, and the labor board finally made them put me back to work, and I got my seniority restored. But one summer I spent up there in Butterfly and got paid for it by the railroad. I botanized for 2 years. I had a sabbatical holiday. I took a sabbatical. What a wonderful time. But one summer I spent in Butterfly Valley.
How long ago was that?
I think it was 1968, if I remember right.
So you went and camped out there?
I camped there the whole summer, yes.
And what did you find?
I found I was busy all summer. Every morning I got up, took my plant press, and went someplace and collected all day and come back at night. And I just spent the whole summer collecting. And it was a very, very liberal education that I got. And I found out lots of things, that very interesting things. I found out, for one thing, how much we've destroyed in this country. There's no better illustration of it than Butterfly.
Could you give an example?
Oh, yes, it's the method of logging that we done up there. They went up there and just cut everything. They took it all out except just a few seed trees. Then it come up, growed up just thick as hair on a dog's back. And it can't do anything but burn. That's just exactly what it will do. That's the way we've logged all over the country. All over the world we've done the same thing. Wherever you cut down the forest, it's never been replaced. And that will never be replaced. That's all going to burn up one of these days, unless they get busy and have controlled burns. They're trying to start it now, but it's very, very difficult to do.
Well, is there any land there that's protected?
There is, but we've fouled it up so bad there's no way to protect it. It's just a little half section of land and protected with all this round that you're logging and messing up. Every way you can think of, you're messing up. Where these automobiles that we drive, messing up the air where the plants can't live. Everything that you're doing is, and the roads that you build, you lose soil and everything that you do. It's a horrible mess that we've done up there.
Could you describe what is protected there so people know?
Well, there's about a half section of land where the Darlantonia is.
The what?
The Darlantonia, the pitcher plant. It's smart. You get on the road, you go up there, you go into the butterfly botanical area, it'll tell you, and it tells you when you leave. It's about a half section of land.
In my understanding is it's because of the botanizing work that you did there that is even protected.
Well, not altogether, but it's a lot of it, yes.
Uh-huh.
It's because I've steadily raised hell about setting aside something around here. We've just cut and cut. Ever since the 49ers come here, everybody has come and destroyed. Everybody's come here to make a fast buck. Nobody's tried to conserve anything, and nobody has conserved anything. We've overgrazed it, we've cut it, we've mined it, everything you can think of. Now we're building houses all over it.
Can you tell me something about your mushrooming experience here?
Oh, I do a lot of mushrooming. I have a tremendous mushroom library, and that's one of my favorite pastimes in the wintertime. That's a real big subject. I'll never live long enough to know much about mushrooms. It's a very important part of our whole ecosystem. This fungi recycles all your nutrients and gets it so you reuse it. If anything could happen to that detritus cycle, you're in trouble. But it's just one part of the whole cycle. Everything that we do interferes with it in some way. This is all my library here has to do with all that subject. Take this row here. This is all the vascular plants from Alaska to the tip of Baja. This is the whole west coast of North America, excluding Mexico. This is Hultane, Alaskan surrounding territories. This is the Baja country, Ira Wiggins. I happen to know the guy, corresponded with him. And this is Leroy Abrams and Munns, and Jepson isn't in here, he's up there, but this is mosses here. And this is mushrooms. Mushrooms Demystified. It's a brand new book. Oh, what a powerful book. But all my library is, practically all of it is devoted to plant taxonomy or labor history or various aspects of American and world history.
Well, now you're self-taught in most everything that you do and that you know. How do you do all of this? I mean, a lot of people go to school to study this and don't end up with the kind of knowledge you have on these levels.
I read books. Look around here. I've got 4 or 5 that come in this week. I've got a brand new book of all the ferns of the United States and Canada. Just come yesterday. I read all the time. I have done that all my life. I have lots of time to read, and I take time to read. And we know so little about this. I'm reading a wonderful book now about life on a little known planet. An entomologist wrote it. And hardly any of us know anything about entomology at all. It's a fascinating subject, and we can't live without the insects. And we don't begin to know anything about it. Lichens. I just bought a new book. They're really expensive, $55 on lichens. I won't live long enough to know anything about it. But there's where it all starts. That's where the soil begins, is lichens. That's the very foundation of the whole business. And all this pollution, it has a greater effect on those little plants like that, the non-vascular plants. There's where your trouble starts. There's where the foundation of life is, and there's where the first trouble starts. I could go on and on and on about this ecology. We're just beginning to learn something about it. Many of my books are on ecology. This is my certificate. It's the fellowship of the Native Plant Society. They made me a fellow last summer. The Native Plant Society is a collection of the best botanists in the state of California. It's a very, very progressive organization, and I feel very proud to have been made a fellow of this organization. It's one of the things that I feel that I've really accomplished something. Very proud of that certificate. You might move to your right there. Here's a picture of John Thomas Howell, the man on the left there. He's the dean of California Plant Taxonomists. He's made over 50,000 herbarium sheets himself. He's been the curator of botany at the California Academy of Science for many years, and still working there. He took Alice Eastwood's place as when she retired, one of the most famous taxonomists that California has produced. But he's a very, very famous man, a very good friend of mine. He'd been here at the cabin many times. And the picture on your right is a picture of John Thomas Howell and myself at Lake Almanor. We were up there to discover a little mimulus. It's about the size of your little fingernail, and it had been lost for about 40 years. They thought that it was extinct. And Vesta Holt, a famous botanist from Chico State, found it there about 40 years ago. So I found it a few years back, and John Thomas Howell was one of the people who come up to see it. There was also our man from the Native Plant Society, Remo Bacigalupi. He's a little older than John Thomas Howell. He came up. And Larry Heckert from the Jepson Herbarium. It was quite a find, and this was a very happy moment for me.
So you have a lot of visitors.
What is that?
You have a lot of visitors.
Yes, yes. We might go through some of the pictures there. There's a picture of Jim Badigan and myself, long about the time we finished building this house here. Jim helped me finish up. I fell off of this when I was building it and broke my back, and Jim come and helped me finish up. It was taking along about that time.
You broke your back building the house?
Yeah, I fell off the roof up here and broke my back. It didn't stop me too long. I was back on the job in a couple of weeks. Now, there's my solar oven. I used it for a good many years. I haven't used it this summer, but it works very well. I built it myself from a pattern that I had. It worked out very well. It'll get up to about 325. And that's my hot water heater. That's very efficient. You can boil water. If I had it working there, you boil water there this afternoon. It's a real efficient way to heat water. And California used to have a lot of those. It's just the old breadbasket type.
You've had a garden for a long time, except for the last couple of years, haven't
Went
you?
out of water. Yeah. They're definitely short of water now. That's a picture of Mary Rewald back in Wisconsin, I think.
No, that's at Indian Falls.
Oh,
Wayne.
that's Indian Falls.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. There's a picture of me and Marnie, Casey Merrill's little girl. That's my granddaughter there. I'm real proud of her. And that's a picture of my friend Casey Merrill over on the Salmon River a few years back. Wonderful, wonderful salmon stream once. It's gone now.
Can you tell us a little bit about the fishing experiences you've had, especially in this country?
Well, it's hard to describe what it was like on the North Fork here once. On opening day, people used to come here from all over the country and line the banks to fish down here. There was a wonderful salmon run. There was a wonderful steelhead run. Those pictures you're showing now are just, that doesn't show up very well. It's a picture of me out gathering mushrooms, but the fishing was unbelievable. But it's been destroyed, let me tell you. It's gone. We've just absolutely ruined the whole business. It's a crime what we've done.
Didn't you used to do a lot of fishing down around Belden?
Oh yes, Belden was one of my favorite spots. I had an old friend that lived down there, Frank Brown, was born there. And he remembers when the salmon was so thick at Belden that you could spear them out of the riffles down there with a pitchfork, the big king salmon. It was just in there by the untold thousands.
You did that with him, or he told you about it?
No, when he was a boy.
Okay.
That stream has really been ruined all my life. It was a good stream, but nothing like his. You see, they built, if I remember right, intake went in 1912. And after that, there was never much of a salmon run.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you also used to farm for Helgramites down there?
Oh, that stream had lots of Helgramites. There was people that had Helgramite farms down there, and they collected Helgramites, used them for bait. That's all disappeared now. There's no fish down there anymore.
What is a Helgramite?
Well, it's a little bug, a Dotson fly is what it hatches out to be. It's quite a large fly, but the Helgramite itself is over an inch long. It's a good big bait for fish, and the rainbow trout, the steelhead, was always after that for bait, and that's what we use for bait, but that's all disappeared from the Feather River now. There's been so much.
You mentioned that when the college came in 1969, a lot of things changed in your life?
Well, yes. Began to have a different class of people come in here. We had lots of people that are interested in the environment. Mike Yost come along very shortly, and we began to get people that were concerned about what was going on around here. Here's a picture of a trip I led for the Native Plant Society down on the west branch of the Feather River. That's a very interesting spot down there. It's part of the old Cherokee Ditch. There's a great, huge hydraulic mining operation down there. And they took their water for that Cherokee digging around this ditch. And it's been left intact. And it belongs to the state, and there's a botanical area there that is relatively undisturbed. It gives an illustration of what the foothill woodlands was like here. There's huge oaks and manzanitas down there. It's a wonderful spot. I wish we could set it aside as a research natural area. I know Chico State uses it quite a little. I've taken several trips down there with the Native Plant Society. There's a picture of my good friends, the little, Jane and John, and their two kids. Wonderful people. I have connections go back to war times with that family. We were conscientious objectors during the war. Wonderful, wonderful people.
Didn't Jane just write an article about you for the Sierra magazine?
That's right, yes. And I know the father and mother. Her father and mother and I were both born in April of 1911. All three of us were born within a few days of each other. What a wonderful family. Quakers. That's a picture of me up with the Darlingtonia, the pitcher plant at Butterfly Valley. It's doesn't show up there very well. It's a little too bright, I suppose.
Well, gee, Wayne, it seems like you have a lot to offer people in terms of, you know, how we can change things for the better. And I was just wondering if you could give some advice to people who are watching this and things that we can do to try and change.
Well, there's three things that we have to do. The three important things is to stop war. We've got to control the population, and we've got to stop the pollution. Those three things are the things that faces the most immediate problems that we have. I think they're all equally important. I don't know which I'd put the most priority on. But we definitely have to control this population. We have to stop the war, and we have to stop the pollution, or we cannot stay here. Well, I know this is going to horrify a lot of people when they look at this thing here in Quincy. I hope so. I'll see you guys. Goodbye and good luck.